Well, people are fantasizing about regime change this weekend, it would appear, and it's actually in two countries, not just one. You might be thinking that one of those two countries is Russia, but that's actually not what I'm talking about. Yes, there are always people in the West who are fantasizing about regime change in Russia and about how the Russians their front line has collapsed and they're spiraling and their troops are just getting put through a meat grinder, and there's going to be a mutiny just like 1917, and the Russian soldiers are going to charge into the Kremlin and execute Vladimir Putin, his family, and any distant relative of his. But no, they've kind of calmed down on that relatively speaking. The two countries that I'm seeing people freak out about, like there's about to be some regime change, are Iran and China. And a spoiler alert, I don't think that there's going to be a regime change in either of those countries, within the next week, month, year. I guess I'll start with China because that's the most obvious one. That's the most ridiculous one. I'm seeing only people really in India, it seems, who are talking about this, but there's so many people in India that it is making it trend on Twitter, for me at least. And there's an impression that a lot of people, think that there is some coup going on in China right now, and that Xi Jinping has been put under house arrest, and that there's some general who Xi Jinping sacked who has now taken over, and it's a new era in China. Does not appear to be the case. There is absolutely no corroboration for this. None of these Indian publications have any evidence to support their claims, and there is no one outside of India that I've seen. No media outlets, no well-connected people who are hearing anything about this, who are getting leaks, because why would it be that if there's, some secret China coup going on, why would it only be leaked to certain members of the Indian media? Why wouldn't it get leaked to British media, or to Japanese media, or to American media? Because surely there have to be people outside of India who would know if there was a coup in China. So I think this China coup story is total BS. Xi Jinping, as far as I know, is well entrenched in power, and he's not going anywhere for a very long time. And so it would best behoove the leaders of every major country in the global, who participates in the global economy, to learn how to deal with Xi Jinping, because he is the supreme leader of the most populous country by far on the planet. And no amount of fantasizing about coups against him is going to change that. So with that said, we'll move on to what I believe is the next fantasy, and that is Iran. Now, it is less crazy and idealistic to believe that the Iranian government is on the verge of collapse. Iran is not like China. I do not think that the Iranian government is as stable or entrenched as the Chinese government. If you ask me which one will last longer, I would say probably the People's Republic of China will probably outlast the Islamic Republic of Iran, in the long march of history. Every regime collapses eventually. We all know that. But I do not think that the current Iranian regime is about to be overthrown and replaced with, a restoration of the Pahlavi dynasty or anything like that. Yes, we're seeing videos of people rioting in Iran. This happens every few years. Yes, there are people riot in Iran too. There were riots here a couple years ago. Did the rest of the world speculate that the American empire was about to collapse? I'll be honest, I did some of that, but did people seriously believe that the Black Lives Matter protesters in Minneapolis were going to overthrow the United States government? Yes, we did have the Chaz, and there was the George Floyd Autonomous Zone as well, set up in Minneapolis, but these were not serious rebellions. These were not people who were taking over military barracks and getting soldiers to switch sides and, raising up their new flag. We just didn't get there. There was no serious fear that Black Lives Matter was going to take over the whole of the United States through a violent revolution. Now, they might have, been able to take it over through, let's say, trying to infiltrate, or that's the wrong word, trying to persuade the Democratic Party and many squishy Republicans. Now, the Black Lives Matter folks botched all that, but was it plausible? Well, yeah, there was a lot of energy behind them, but that's, a mass movement achieving political goals is not a coup. What they're talking about in Iran right now is that, I guess, the anti-prudish protesters, the women who want to dress in a more, or shall I say, less conservative fashion. These people are not about to overthrow the Ayatollah and, put all of the mullahs' heads on pikes. Riots happen sometimes, and governments can endure that. Every few years, there are some riots in Iran, and the Western media likes to tell us, oh my gosh, this is it. The Ayatollah's, he's on his last leg. People are tired of him. They want a democracy. And in the end, nothing ever happens. The government endures, just like most governments do, when there are riots. It is the exception when riots lead to the fall of a regime. And so I see nothing special about this current bout of riots in Iran. I see no signs that this is any more significant of an upheaval than the country has experienced in the past. And so, as far as I'm concerned, the Iranian government is going to continue on in perpetuity. Well, perpetuity is the wrong phrase. As I said before, all regimes die eventually. But the government in Iran is not on the brink of collapse. Now, there is a small chance that they are, and that I will have to eat these words, and if so, I'll admit it at the time. But I feel much more comfortable taking this side of the bet than the side that most of the media is right now. Now, one last fiction. I guess I will throw something in about Russia and Ukraine today. A lot of people have already made fun of it, but hey, I haven't had my chance yet, so I'm going to give it a go. There was some, NATO shill on Twitter who is, always open to believing the most ridiculous ideas or stories about Russia and the war effort. One of these people who thinks that, Russia's on their last leg, and they've lost hundreds of thousands of soldiers, and people are going to riot any minute and overthrow Putin because they're tired of losing the war. The Russian soldiers don't have proper winter coats. They don't know how to deal with the snow. These obvious fabrications. Well, this guy believed, or at least I don't know if he ever believed it. He tried to make people believe that these 300,000 conscripts who have been called up by Russia are being armed with 1891 Mosin Nagant rifles. And to support his claim, he posted a picture that he did not take himself, but rather was taken in 2020, 2 years ago, in, I believe it was St. Petersburg. And these were military cadets who were rehearsing for a Victory Day parade. And so these were Russians who were cosplaying as World War II soldiers, carrying World War II rifles, and I believe wearing World War II uniforms. And the NATO shills think that you are dumb enough to believe that this is how Russia is arming and equipping their soldiers for the war in Ukraine, because they're that out of resources, I guess, that they had to go all the way back to the back of the barracks and dig out their old World War II equipment, get the old steel helmets, no body armor, and bolt-action rifles. What an insult to your own followers that you think that they're that stupid. And if it wasn't intentional and this guy was that stupid, that just shows you how deranged these people are, that they could believe something that is that incredible, that was the conclusion that he jumped to when he saw that picture. Because even if somehow the Russians, let's say the Ukrainians, managed to sabotage, what do they call it now? It used to be like Izhmash, I think, and then before that it was Izhevsk. I think now they just call it, I think they renamed it Kalashnikov Concern or something. The whole arms, the small arms factory in Russia. If that somehow was sabotaged by the Ukrainians and they couldn't make any more AKs, and somehow they ran out of their stockpile of AKs, which I'm sure the Russians have crates and crates of AKs from every era of production buried under every hill, in the side of every hill in Russia. If somehow the Russians ran out of AKs, the idea that they would go all the way back to the Mosin and not at least, start issuing SKSs first, because I'm sure they've got plenty of those still left over too. I mean, it's incredible. The amount of logical hoops that you have to jump through to believe that Russia is handing out Mosin Nagants to frontline soldiers who they're conscripting, because they're totally tapped out. They have nothing left. It's pure Looney Tunes. And so this guy tried to defend himself, actually. He didn't even really admit he was wrong. He said, okay, well, sure, that picture was wrong, but the idea was correct. And he showed pictures from the Donbass of guys carrying Mosin Nagants. I hate to tell you again, this is not Russia issuing people Mosin Nagants. These were personal possessions. These were guys who were going out, who were so passionate about fighting for Mother Russia in the Donbass that they went and they got their grandfather's World War II rifle out. And they interviewed. I mean, these guys were interviewed at the time. They talked about this. He went and put on a World War II uniform because he was fighting the fascists. That was the point. He wanted to feel like a World War II Red Army soldier going off to fight the Nazis. That's why he had a Mosin Nagant. And I'm sure the rest of the guys, if you saw them, had similar stories. They were not issued those weapons from an armory. They had them in their personal possession. So I just wanted to get in my 2 cents on that. Anyway, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.